The briefing room aboard the Relentless Pursuit smelled of ozone and overconfidence. Commander Vexthul studied the holographic display with the sort of casual interest one might reserve for choosing breakfast. The target profile rotated slowly in blue light. Bipedal, carbon-based, approximately 12 standard cycles old by human reckoning. A whelp? Hunter Crickstan's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his species. Command is sending the Voidstalkers after a whelp? Apparently, this particular whelp survived the Kepler 442 cleansing. Vexthul manipulated the display, zooming in on reconnaissance footage of the gutted colony. 300 adults eliminated, yet somehow a juvenile evaded detection for 47 rotations. Over 97% of viewers here are watching without subscribing. Don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button right now and join the journey. Every click helps us grow stronger, and you'll never miss the next epic story. The newest member of their pack, Zethmore, leaned forward with the enthusiasm of someone who hadn't yet learned that enthusiasm was unprofessional. What's the tactical assessment? Camouflage adaptation? Natural predator instincts? The veteran hunters exchanged glances that conveyed entire conversations about rookies and their adorable misconceptions. It's a human, not a Vorthak stalker cat. Crickstan's translator rendered his amusement in flat tones. They're emotional mammals. Software. Their young are particularly helpless. Something about extended development cycles. No natural weapons, minimal sensory capabilities, completely dependent on social structures for survival. Vexthul pulled up the species file with practiced efficiency. Standard mammalian weaknesses apply. Requires regular feeding intervals, extended rest periods, cannot survive temperature extremes. Psychological profile indicates high stress responses, panic reactions, and attachment behaviors that make them predictably irrational. So why send us? Zethmore's eagerness was beginning to grate on everyone present. A single enforcement drone could handle extraction and termination. Because Vexthul's 4 eyes focused on the rookie with the patience of someone explaining basic physics to a particularly slow asteroid. This represents an opportunity for practical training. You've run simulations, but you've never tracked living prey through hostile terrain. Consider this a graduation exercise. The ship's intelligence officer, Quill Neth, materialized her holographic form beside the tactical display. Her species existed primarily as digital consciousness, which made her simultaneously the most efficient and most insufferable member of any crew. The colony's location offers excellent training scenarios, she announced, with the cheerful precision of a weapons system achieving target lock. Abandoned industrial infrastructure, varied terrain, multiple concealment options. The juvenile has likely established a temporary shelter in the ruins, probably near a water source, definitely somewhere with easy escape routes to multiple backup positions. You sound like you admire the creature's survival instincts, Crickstan observed. I admire efficiency in all its forms, Quillneth replied, though I find it curious that a species described as emotionally unstable and technologically primitive managed to establish colonies in 47 systems before we noticed them. Reproduction rates, Vexthul dismissed. They breed like fungal spores, quantity over quality, a common evolutionary strategy among lesser species. The ship's pilot, a member of the gas giant-dwelling Nethys who communicated through color-shifting atmospheric displays, pulsed a pattern that translated roughly to sardonic agreement. The pilot had opinions about most things, but rarely shared them verbally, preferring to let others make fools of themselves while maintaining professional superiority through calculated silence. How long do we allocate for the exercise? Zethmore had pulled up the mission parameters on his personal display. Standard protocols suggest a maximum of 6 rotations for cleanup operations. 2 rotations, Vexthul decided. One for tracking and containment, one for termination and site sterilization. The juvenile has been alone for 47 rotations. It's probably half dead from malnutrition and exposure. We're not hunting a warrior. We're performing pest control. Crixdan's mandibles produced a sound like grinding metal. What's the betting pool looking like? Currently favoring environmental factors. Quilneth displayed the odds in cheerful holographic text. Hypothermia leads at 4-1, followed by dehydration at 6-1. Actual combat mortality is running 30-1 against, mostly because the target lacks any documented weapons training or combat augmentation. I'll take accidental death. The pilot's colors shifted to indicate mild interest in the proceedings. Humans have a documented tendency towards self-termination under stress. Probably wandered into a processing plant and got caught in automated machinery. Zethmore studied the tactical assessments with the intensity of someone who believed preparation prevented poor performance. The psychological profile mentioned something called persistence hunting. Should we factor that into our approach? The collective silence that followed suggested this question ranked somewhere between endearingly naive and professionally embarrassing. Persistence hunting, Vexthul explained with exaggerated patience, involves chasing prey until it dies of exhaustion. It requires pack coordination, extended physical endurance, and tactical planning across multiple terrain types. We're discussing a solitary juvenile that's been hiding in ruins eating scavenged rations. The comparison is somewhat lacking in relevance. Besides, Crixdan added, persistence hunting assumes the hunter is faster than the prey. Human locomotion is notoriously inefficient. Maximum recorded speed is approximately 17 units per time increment, slower than most domesticated food animals on civilized worlds. The pilot's color display shifted to something resembling amusement. Everyone ignored this, as usual. Mission parameters are straightforward, Vexthul continued. We make planetfall at coordinates that maximize tracking opportunities while minimizing the target's escape options. Crixdan takes point for scent tracking. Human emotional distress produces distinctive chemical signatures that should make the trail obvious. Zethmore handles perimeter control and backup extraction. I coordinate overall tactical response. And if the target attempts communication? Zethmore asked. Standard protocols for pre-termination intelligence gathering? What intelligence could a human whelp possibly possess? Crixdan's translator couldn't quite convey the full contempt in his native clicking. They're not a strategic species, no significant technology, no meaningful military capabilities, no political structures worth infiltrating. They're a cleanup problem, not an intelligence opportunity. Quilneth's projection flickered slightly, which might have been digital contemplation or might have been a processing hiccup. The initial survey classified them as primitive but persistent. Perhaps we should what? Vexthul interrupted. Exercise elaborate caution while hunting a starving child. Deploy full battle protocols against a target that probably weighs less than our equipment packs. The Empire doesn't pay us to overthink pest control. The ship's navigation systems chimed softly, indicating their approach to the target system. Through the observation ports, Kepler 442b rotated slowly, its surface scarred by the systematic destruction that had eliminated the human presence. Or most of it anyway. Final equipment check, Vexthul ordered. Standard hunting package plus emergency medical supplies in case someone trips over debris. We're not expecting resistance, but ruins can be hazardous. As the team prepared for deployment, none of them bothered to review the full xenological report on human behavioral patterns under extreme stress. The summary had been deemed sufficient. Emotional, irrational, technologically dependent, physically fragile. The complete file, buried in subsection 12 of the appendices, contained a single footnote that might have proved relevant. Juvenile humans separated from social groups have demonstrated unpredictable behavioral modifications including advanced problem-solving capabilities and apparent cognitive acceleration under survival conditions. Recommend comprehensive psychological assessment before engagement protocols. But footnotes were for researchers, not hunters. And besides, how dangerous could one frightened child possibly be? The relentless pursuit entered the planet's atmosphere with the confidence of professionals who had never encountered a prey species that treated being hunted as a learning opportunity. The landing zone should have been a monument to imperial efficiency. Instead, it resembled a carefully orchestrated invitation to disaster. Vexthul crouched beside what remained of the colony's central processing facility, studying tracks that made no tactical sense. The footprints led directly toward the most defensible position in the complex, then doubled back through an elaborate pattern that suggested either complete panic or deliberate misdirection. "She's been here recently," Crickstan confirmed, his sensory apparatus twitching as he analyzed chemical traces. "But the scent pattern is structured, almost like she wanted us to find this location." "Wanted us to find it?" Zethmore hefted his plasma rifle with the nervous energy of someone discovering that textbook scenarios bore little resemblance to field conditions. "That implies tactical thinking." The briefing indicated human juveniles lack strategic planning capabilities. "The briefing," observed their pilot through the comm system, colors shifting to patterns that roughly translated as philosophical resignation, also indicated this would take 2 rotations. Quilneth's voice crackled through their communication array with uncharacteristic hesitation. "I'm detecting some irregularities in the facility's power grid. Several systems are drawing energy, but the colony was supposed to be completely dead." The irregularities revealed themselves with explosive clarity approximately 3 seconds later. The ground beneath Crickstan transformed into a perfectly engineered pitfall, complete with sharpened metal debris arranged in patterns that suggested someone had been studying Imperial anatomy textbooks. His reflexes saved him from the worst of it, but his dignified hunter's grace disappeared along with several layers of his protective carapace. "Ambush protocols," Vexthul barked, which was entirely unnecessary since everyone was already diving for cover behind whatever debris looked substantial enough to stop projectiles. "Where is she?" Zethmore's voice pitched higher than strictly professional. "Visual contact? Thermal signatures?" "Negative on thermals," Quilneth reported, with the calm of someone who existed in digital format and couldn't be stabbed with improvised weapons. "But I'm picking up electromagnetic signatures from 7 different locations. She's rigged some kind of sensor network." The next trap announced itself with the subtle elegance of industrial equipment achieving goals its designers never intended. The colony's ore processing system, supposedly deactivated for 47 rotations, suddenly demonstrated renewed enthusiasm for its work by launching a stream of metallic fragments in precise arcs calculated to make standing upright a distinctly hazardous career choice. "She's weaponized mining equipment." Crickstan's communication came through gritted mandibles as he applied emergency medical foam to wounds that hadn't been in his morning schedule. "How does a primitive juvenile understand our technology well enough to repurpose it?" "Maybe," their pilot suggested, with colors that implied barely contained amusement. "The primitives aren't as primitive as advertised." The comm system crackled with an incoming transmission that shouldn't have been possible. Imperial hunting frequencies were encrypted, shielded, and theoretically impenetrable to anyone lacking specialized equipment and graduate-level training in xenotechnology. "Hello?" The voice was young, female, and spoke Imperial Standard with an accent that suggested formal education rather than battlefield acquisition. "I assume you're here about the extermination contract. Should we discuss terms, or would you prefer to continue with the traditional approach?" Vexthul's 4 eyes focused on his communication array with the intensity of someone discovering that established protocols had suddenly become optional. Identify yourself. I'm the target you're hunting, though I suspect the dynamics of this encounter differ somewhat from your operational expectations. Zethmore checked his weapon's power levels with movements that had acquired a nervous quality. She sounds calm. Shouldn't she be terrified? Terror, the transmission continued, apparently monitoring their frequencies, assumes ignorance of the tactical situation. I've spent 47 rotations studying your species, your technology, and your hunting methodologies. Would you like a demonstration of what I've learned? Or shall we proceed directly to negotiations? The demonstration manifested as a series of precisely coordinated explosions that turned the facility's remaining structures into a kinetic sculpture, celebrating the artistic potential of directed destruction. None of the hunters were seriously injured, but their equipment packs disappeared into carefully calculated debris patterns that suggested someone had been planning this choreography for quite some time. Negotiations? Crickstan's voice carried the bewildered tone of someone whose worldview had just been subjected to percussive maintenance. We're conducting a termination operation, not a diplomatic mission. Your mission parameters may require updating, the voice replied with helpful cheerfulness. I've been broadcasting detailed recordings of your approach, tactical assessments, and species-specific vulnerabilities to 17 different receivers in the Sol system. Earth's military intelligence divisions are particularly interested in your hunting methodologies. The silence that followed contained the sort of profound implications that careers were built on avoiding. Broadcasting how? Quilneth's digital consciousness experienced something resembling alarm. The colony's communication array was destroyed in the initial cleansing. I rebuilt it, also improved it. Your species has fascinating approaches to quantum entanglement communication, much more elegant than anything in our databases. Vexthul felt the distinct sensation of a simple assignment transforming into the sort of complicated situation that generated formal inquiries. You're claiming to have reverse-engineered Imperial communication technology? Reverse-engineered, improved, and established real-time contact with my species' home system. The technical specifications are already being analyzed by approximately 40,000 engineers, physicists, and military strategists. They're very excited about the quantum encryption protocols. The pilot's color display shifted to patterns that suggested resignation mixed with professional admiration. Everyone continued ignoring this. Impossible, Zethmore declared, with the confidence of someone whose training had covered standard impossibilities, but not creative ones. Human technological development is centuries behind Imperial standards. Your intelligence assessments appear to contain some inaccuracies, the voice replied. For instance, you've classified humans as emotionally unstable and technologically dependent, but you haven't accounted for what happens when you remove our social support structures and leave us with 47 rotations to study your equipment. Another series of explosions punctuated this observation, clearing additional escape routes while simultaneously blocking the hunter's most obvious tactical options. The precision suggested extensive planning combined with intimate knowledge of Imperial hunting strategies. She's hurting us, Crickstan realized with the sort of clarity that arrives too late to be useful. Every trap, every explosion, she's controlling our movement patterns. Hurting implies livestock, the transmission continued. I prefer to think of it as collaborative tactical positioning. You'll notice your current location provides excellent cover from aerial surveillance, while offering multiple concealment options. Very considerate of me, don't you think? Vexthul's tactical assessment capabilities struggled to process a scenario where the prey was providing strategic advantages to the hunters. What do you want? What I want and what you need are fortunately compatible. You need to complete your mission parameters without triggering a diplomatic incident. I need Earth to understand exactly what they're dealing with in galactic politics. The comm system delivered this information with helpful clarity, but the implications felt like trying to swallow live ammunition. "And how?" Quilneth asked with digital precision. "Do you propose to accomplish both objectives?" "Simple. You return to your superiors and report successful target elimination. I continue broadcasting technical intelligence to Earth while remaining officially dead. Everyone achieves their goals through creative interpretation of mission parameters." The pause that followed contained the weight of professionals discovering that their simple assignment had evolved into something requiring actual thinking. "You're proposing to fake your own death," Vexthul said slowly, "so that we can maintain operational security while you commit espionage against the Empire. I'm proposing a mutually beneficial arrangement that prevents this situation from escalating into something neither of us wants to explain to our respective authorities." Another explosion, smaller this time, revealed a concealed passage that led directly away from their position. The message was clear. Continuing the hunt remained an option, but the tactical landscape had shifted considerably. "How do we know you won't expose everything once we leave?" Zethmore asked. "Because exposing you accomplishes nothing useful, but having detailed Imperial technology specifications, hunting protocols, and strategic assessments gives Earth something much more valuable than revenge." The pilot's colors shifted to something resembling grudging respect, which everyone continued to ignore despite its increasing relevance to their situation. Vexthul realized he was facing the sort of decision that would either end his career or define it. The mission parameters seemed increasingly theoretical compared to the practical reality of a prey species that had turned hunting into a collaborative exercise in technology transfer. "We'll need guarantees," he said finally. "You'll have them," along with a comprehensive report explaining how a simple extermination contract became humanity's introduction to galactic civilization. The transmission ended, leaving 4 professional hunters to contemplate the possibility that their prey had just negotiated their way into becoming the Empire's newest strategic problem. The emergency conference call with Imperial Command materialized in holographic splendor approximately 6 minutes after Vexthul submitted his initial status report. The fact that 3 different admirals, a strategic intelligence coordinator, and someone whose title translated roughly as Director of Unpleasant Surprises, had cleared their schedules suggested that simple pest control had evolved into something requiring Admiralty-level attention. Admiral Corthex's image flickered with the sort of digital instability that indicated either poor transmission quality or barely contained fury. "Explain to me, Commander, how a routine termination operation has become an intelligence security crisis." "The target demonstrates capabilities inconsistent with species assessment parameters," Vexthul replied, with the careful precision of someone whose career depended on making disasters sound like minor procedural variations. "She's established communication with her home system and appears to possess advanced technical knowledge." "A human juvenile," Strategic Coordinator Velnath interrupted, "has reverse-engineered quantum entanglement communication and established real-time contact across 14 light-years of space." 17 light-years, Crickstan corrected from his position beside the medical supply cache. "And she improved the signal clarity while she was at it." The silence that followed contained the sort of pregnant implications that generally preceded career-ending reassignments. "Director?" Admiral Corthex addressed the individual, whose actual name was apparently classified above their security clearance. "What's the assessment from xenological intelligence?" The Director of Unpleasant Surprises consulted data streams that existed in dimensions normal beings couldn't perceive. "Initial human contact occurred 43 standard cycles ago. We classified them as technologically primitive based on their visible infrastructure and cultural development patterns. However, the classification may have been premature." "Premature how?" Admiral Sethdar's image joined the conference with the abrupt materialization of someone who had been conducting other urgent business until approximately 90 seconds ago. Humans appear to demonstrate accelerated development under specific stress conditions. The director continued. Isolation, resource scarcity, and imminent threat scenarios trigger behavioral modifications that weren't documented in our initial surveys. Quilneth's digital presence fluctuated as she processed incoming intelligence updates. I'm receiving reports from monitoring stations throughout the sector. Human colonies in 14 systems have suddenly activated communication arrays we didn't know they possessed. They're coordinating responses across their entire territorial space. Responses to what? Strategic Coordinator Velnath asked, with the tone of someone who suspected the answer would require additional headache medication. To us, Vexthul admitted. The target has been providing tactical analysis of Imperial hunting methodologies, equipment specifications, and strategic assessments. Earth's military infrastructure is adapting in real time. Admiral Korithex's image stabilized as his fury achieved professional focus. How much intelligence has been compromised? All of it, their pilot interjected, with colors that suggested philosophical acceptance of catastrophic inevitability. She's been monitoring our communications, analyzing our behavioral patterns, and documenting our technological capabilities since we entered the system. The director of Unpleasant Surprises experienced what might have been digital contemplation, or possibly existential crisis. The strategic implications are extensive. Humans now possess detailed intelligence on Imperial military capabilities, hunting protocols, and species-specific tactical approaches. Sir, Zethmore ventured with the desperate optimism of someone hoping simple solutions might still apply to complex problems. Couldn't we resolve this through system sterilization? Complete elimination of all human presence in the region? The pause that followed contained the weight of professionals calculating the political ramifications of genocide. Negative, Admiral Sethdar replied. Humans have established colonies in 47 systems. Complete sterilization would require fleet-level operations across multiple sectors. The resource allocation alone would trigger questions from the Imperial Senate. Plus, Strategic Coordinator Velnath added with helpful precision. They're now coordinating defensive strategies across their entire territorial space. System sterilization would face organized resistance rather than isolated targets. The comm system crackled with another unauthorized transmission that demonstrated the target's continued ability to monitor their supposedly secure communications. Gentlemen, the familiar voice announced with cheerful politeness. I hope you don't mind the interruption, but I thought you might appreciate a status update on human defensive preparations. Admiral Korithex's expression achieved levels of controlled fury that approached artistic achievement. This is a secure Imperial military conference. Your encryption protocols are fascinating but not impenetrable, she replied. Earth's Cryptanalysis Division send their compliments, by the way. They're particularly impressed with your quantum key distribution methods. You're monitoring Imperial Command communications? The director of Unpleasant Surprises asked, with tones that suggested professional admiration competing with institutional horror. Monitoring, analyzing, and forwarding relevant intelligence to appropriate human authorities. Currently tracking 17 different Imperial fleet movements throughout the sector. The strategic implications hit everyone simultaneously with the force of a collapsing star. She's turned this entire operation into a comprehensive intelligence-gathering mission, Strategic Coordinator Velnath realized. Every response we make provides additional data about Imperial military capabilities. Correct, the target confirmed. Although I prefer to think of it as collaborative education. Humans are naturally curious about our galactic neighbors. Admiral Sethdar's image flickered as he consulted tactical databases in real time. What are human defensive capabilities now that they possess Imperial intelligence? Improving rapidly, she replied with helpful enthusiasm. Earth's industrial capacity is redirecting toward military production. Colony defense systems are upgrading to incorporate Imperial technology specifications. Oh, and they're very excited about your plasma containment systems. This is escalating beyond our containment capabilities, Admiral Korathex observed, with the calm of someone watching carefully laid plans transform into textbook examples of strategic catastrophe. It doesn't have to, the target said. I'm prepared to offer a comprehensive solution that addresses everyone's concerns. The Director of Unpleasant Surprises processed this information through analytical frameworks designed for impossibly complex scenarios. What kind of solution? Simple. The Empire formally recognizes human territorial claims and establishes diplomatic contact. In exchange, humans provide technical expertise for collaborative research projects. Everyone benefits from expanded knowledge and reduced military expenditures. The silence stretched long enough for entire civilizations to rise and fall. You're proposing, Strategic Coordinator Velnath said slowly, that the Empire negotiate with a species we classified as primitive because a single juvenile has demonstrated superior tactical capabilities? I'm proposing that classifications based on limited data sometimes require updating when new information becomes available. Crixdon, still applying medical treatment to wounds inflicted by creatively repurposed mining equipment, managed a sound that might have been laughter or possibly species-specific despair. She's manipulated our entire command structure into a diplomatic negotiation. Not manipulated, the voice corrected. Educated. There's an important distinction. Admiral Korathex exchanged glances with his colleagues that conveyed entire conversations about career survival and institutional reputation. And if the Empire declines your proposal, then humans continue expanding their defensive capabilities using Imperial technology, your hunting operations face organized resistance throughout the sector, and this conversation gets forwarded to approximately 12 different species who might find Imperial strategic assessments illuminating. The pilot's color patterns shifted to something resembling resignation, mixed with grudging professional respect. She's created a scenario where cooperation benefits everyone, while conflict serves no one's interests, Admiral Sethdar observed, with tones that suggested tactical appreciation competing with institutional frustration. Exactly. Though I should mention that Earth's diplomatic corps is very interested in establishing formal contact protocols. They have questions about Imperial government structure, territorial expansion policies, and trade opportunities. The Director of Unpleasant Surprises processed probability matrices that extended into dimensions requiring advanced mathematics to comprehend. The strategic balance has shifted. Human intelligence capabilities now match or exceed our own in several critical areas. All because, Vexthul said with dawning comprehension, we sent hunters after a human child who treated being hunted as an educational opportunity. Learning, the target replied cheerfully, is what humans do best, especially when the alternative is extinction. The conference call dissolved into urgent private communications between Imperial officials who suddenly faced the prospect of explaining to higher authorities how a routine extermination contract had evolved into humanity's formal introduction to galactic politics. 3 hours later, the ruins of Kepler 442b hosted the most unusual diplomatic summit in galactic history. The human child, who had finally introduced herself as Dr. Elena Vasquez, apparently having earned multiple advanced degrees during her 47 rotations of survival, sat cross-legged on a makeshift throne constructed from salvaged Imperial equipment. Her age remained 12 by any reasonable standard, but her eyes held the weight of someone who had accelerated through several decades of education in approximately 6 weeks. Before we formalize agreements, she said, consulting notes written on the back of Imperial ration packaging, I should clarify a few misconceptions in your species assessments. Vexthul, now serving as unofficial ambassador to a civilization he'd been sent to exterminate, gestured for her to continue. The irony wasn't lost on anyone present, least of all their pilot, whose color displays had achieved permanent patterns of philosophical amusement. Humans don't actually require social structures for survival, Elena explained, with the cheerful precision of someone correcting fundamental scientific errors. We require social structures for sanity. When you remove the social component, our cognitive development accelerates to compensate. It's an evolutionary adaptation to isolation scenarios. You're saying, Crixton interrupted while adjusting his medical apparatus, that separating human juveniles from their support systems makes them more dangerous, not less? Exponentially more dangerous, also more creative, more determined, and significantly more interested in understanding the people trying to kill them. She held up a device that looked suspiciously like modified Imperial scanning equipment. This has been recording everything since you landed. Voice patterns, behavioral analysis, tactical decision trees, species-specific stress responses. Quilneth's digital consciousness experienced something resembling admiration. You've been conducting xenological research on your hunters. Research, psychological profiling, and strategic analysis. Humans are naturally curious about predator behavior. When the predators are sentient, technologically advanced, and representative of galactic civilization, the research becomes rather comprehensive. Zethmore studied his weapon as if it might provide answers to questions he hadn't known to ask. The Empire has protocols for first contact scenarios. This isn't how they're supposed to proceed. Your protocols assume contact with established civilizations possessing comparable technology and political structures, Elena replied. They don't account for contact with species that treat survival as a graduate-level education in xenotechnology and interstellar politics. The communication array crackled with incoming transmissions from multiple sources. Earth's diplomatic corps, Imperial Command, various intelligence agencies, and what sounded like academic institutions across several species were apparently monitoring the proceedings with intense interest. Dr. Vasquez, Admiral Corithex's voice carried the weight of someone whose career had just taken an unexpected detour through uncharted territory. Earth's representatives are requesting formal confirmation of your authority to negotiate on humanity's behalf. Elena's expression shifted to something resembling barely contained laughter. I'm 12 years old, Admiral. I don't have authority to negotiate anything. But I do have detailed intelligence on Imperial military capabilities, comprehensive analysis of galactic political structures, and approximately 8 billion humans who are very interested in what I've learned. The pause that followed contained implications that extended far beyond immediate diplomatic concerns. You're not a negotiator, Vexthul realized. You're a catalyst. Correct. Humans don't need me to speak for them. They need information about what they're dealing with in galactic politics. I've provided that information along with practical demonstrations of how to acquire more. Strategic Coordinator, Velnath's voice joined the conversation with tones that suggested rapid recalculation of fundamental assumptions. What do you mean by practical demonstrations? Every human colony now knows how to reverse engineer Imperial technology, establish quantum communication networks, and convert industrial equipment into defensive systems. More importantly, they know that galactic civilization has been systematically eliminating developing species for resource control. The pilot's color patterns achieved new levels of philosophical complexity that everyone continued ignoring despite their increasing relevance. This information will destabilize existing political relationships throughout the sector. The director of Unpleasant Surprises observed, with tones that might have been concern or possibly professional appreciation. Only if you assume other species prefer ignorance to knowledge, Elena replied. Most intelligent beings appreciate learning about their galactic neighbors, especially when those neighbors have been making territorial expansion decisions without consultation. The implications cascaded through multiple levels of political analysis with the efficiency of a well-designed avalanche. She's created a scenario where the Empire must choose between open conflict with multiple species or formal recognition of territorial sovereignty throughout the sector, Admiral Sethdar realized. Not just territorial sovereignty, Elena corrected. Collaborative development agreements, technology-sharing protocols, and diplomatic frameworks for resolving expansion disputes. Basically, civilization. Crixdan's mandibles produced sounds that might have been laughter or possibly species-specific existential crisis. A human child has forced the Empire to invent interstellar diplomacy. Humans didn't invent diplomacy, Elena said with helpful precision. We just applied it to situations where other species preferred military solutions. The communication array delivered another status update from Earth's rapidly expanding defensive infrastructure. Human colonies were coordinating resource allocation, sharing technological developments, and establishing mutual defense agreements with the sort of efficiency that suggested they'd been preparing for galactic contact for decades rather than hours. How long? Admiral Corthex asked, with the tone of someone whose strategic assessments required complete recalibration. Have humans been anticipating contact with galactic civilization? Since we developed space travel, Elena replied, we've always assumed we weren't alone. The mathematics made isolation statistically improbable. We just hadn't figured out how to find you before you found us. And now we have comprehensive intelligence on Imperial technology, detailed maps of galactic political structures, and practical experience in converting being hunted into educational opportunities. She gestured to the surrounding ruins, which had been transformed from a memorial to destruction into the foundation of humanity's galactic future. Plus, we have proof that galactic civilization includes species interested in cooperation as well as conquest. The pilot's color display shifted to patterns that clearly indicated "I told you so" in several different emotional registers. What happens now? Zethmore asked, with the tone of someone whose training had covered standard scenarios, but not paradigm shifts. Now, Elena said, consulting her improvised notes one final time. Humans begin participating in galactic civilization. The Empire explains to its other neighbors why territorial expansion policies are being modified, and everyone discovers what happens when a species that treats survival as education becomes part of interstellar politics. She stood up from her salvaged throne, a 12-year-old human who had accidentally become the catalyst for the largest political transformation in galactic history. Also, she added with cheerful helpfulness, Earth's universities are very excited about establishing exchange programs. Apparently, Imperial hunting methodologies contain several innovations that our military academies find fascinating. The universe, which had begun this day with a simple extermination contract, now contained the foundations of interstellar civilization built from the ruins of a failed hunt. The Empire had sent hunters for a human child and discovered that some prey species considered being hunted an invitation to revolutionize galactic politics. Elena Vasquez picked up her improvised communication device and began coordinating humanity's introduction to its galactic neighbors, one species at a time. Behind her, 4 professional hunters contemplated the possibility that their greatest success had been failing so spectacularly that it created something entirely unprecedented. The pilot's final color display, ignored by everyone as usual, translated roughly as, "Humans, obviously,